Funky politics.
Funky politics. Funky politics.
Funky politics.
Funky politics.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. I am DC, one of the hosts of this wonderful program, sitting here with two of the finest Americans that America ever produced.
That's right.
I think I can call you American.
We make America great.
Oh, God, I'm done.
The new America.
We make America great.
That's the again part, it wasn't great.
It wasn't great before, but now it's great now because of who we got.
It's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Doing our
Hey,
part.
look.
We
Funky,
make America
Tosha Downey, Doc Ward,
Yeah.
Funky Politics. We back again, y'all. What's
Making
up?
America just great.
Making America just great.
Yeah, just making it great.
Great today.
Just great. We just grading all over the place.
Y'all sick, man. What is it? What's going on in America today?
What's going on in America today?
What is going on? My boy Marvin.
I want to talk
What's
about
going
something.
on?
I'm going to tell you what's going on. Something
What's
I
up?
just read.
Tell me what's up.
I understand that now.
Yes, sir.
Kellyanne Conway. You all know Kellyanne Conway, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Friend of mine.
So
Go ahead.
good friend of yours,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Good friend of yours. Okay. Anyway, Kellyanne with her alternative facts. Her husband, George, is a lawyer,
Sure.
very prominent lawyer of influence, is wanting to get call some kind of way for Donald Trump to be tested for his mental fitness. Somehow he's concerned. He's concerned.
Rule 25.
Now, yeah, Amendment 25. But my question is this, though. You want us to get the president, or you want us to vote for, or someone to vote for the president to get tested for mental fitness. But your wife's working for him. I mean, I don't understand.
How do you juxtapose it at night when you go home and you say, "Hey, why are you talking about my boss, George?"
Yeah, but if you want to get tested, you think that he's crazy. Would you want to get your wife tested first?
Let's move on.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out.
Let's move on.
They building a house of cards. That's why he don't care
I-
about his wife being tested. They building a house of cards.
But what do you mean? What do you mean?
I mean, in House of Cards, the strategy is we want the kingdom.
Oh, okay.
So we don't, it by any means, right? The ends justifies the means.
So do you think that she's like working? Who do you think she's working for?
I don't know who she's working for, but she's definitely elevated her prominence. She's
on both
elevated
sides
her
of the coin.
brand. Her marketability and financial capacity has to be exponential.
Oh, and then she's working for the G.
Let me talk about some exponential work that's happening locally.
She's
right?
working for the G.
On today's show. On today's show.
Is Kellyanne Conway on the show?
Not
She
today.
gets on everybody else's show. Why is she not on this show, DC? I thought you were running things.
We don't
She
want
wouldn't return my call.
We don't want her.
I thought you said you knew her.
I've got the other guy though.
Well, who do you know?
I've got the other guy.
Who's the other
Deron. He's gonna be on next week.
Deron?
Deron.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Look,
yeah.
On today's show, we've got Lieutenant Anthony Buckner with the Shelby County Sheriff's Department, who's going to come in and drop a little stuff in our spirit. He's a public information officer for the sheriff. Sheriff Floyd Bonner, by the way.
Okay.
First black elected sheriff of Shelby County, Tennessee, which is a big deal to us here.
Very big deal. Everywhere.
He's doing a lot of good work in this space, and you know what? I think we have a great show. And we're going to talk a little bit more about your good friends.
Kellyanne Conway?
Yes, sir.
And her issue?
Yeah.
Then we talk about Elaine Child, too. She's got that issue, too.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And a little bit about what? A little bit about kind of this, not the Becky with the good hair piece, but about colleges and
we're
how
just
the
going to
entrance
talk
problem-
about some funky politics.
some funky stuff. Right
you
here
go.
on Funky Politics. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We got the funk. Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network. Keeping it real, right, and funky.
Is this an opportunity that we can seize and express interest from the governor and the state to act on the behalf of young people in Shelby County? There are stories that we don't want to tell because they will piss some folks off, make some folk mad.
Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
Funky Politics.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. I am DC, sitting here along with longtime host. What, not you, Doc? Doc Ward. I got to bring you in first, Doc.
Why?
Because you and I joined at the hip.
Okay.
And also Tosha Downey. Tasha, hey.
That was a hell of a surgery.
That was a bad surgery,
That was
wasn't
a hell of a surgery. But I thank God for it every day.
Poor mama, boy, I tell you.
I thank God for it every day.
You were the evil twin.
I
that was
thank
born
him
with,
for
you know
it every day.
You were the evil twin.
But anyway.
Yes. What we got going on
Funky Politics is wonderful and rich like fine wine, music for your mind, keeping you up so you won't get behind and have to rewind. And we do it just fine. Real, right, funky, every doggone day.
I like the way you say all that, man.
And if I were not separated from you, I would not be able to say it that way.
Tasha Downey, what's up with the brother over here? What's up with this brother?
We just trying to help the brother. We just trying to give him something to do.
See, that's what I thought. Trying to give another lawyer something.
He's another lawyer
Look, get out of
refugee.
here. Look, today
We do
y'all
have a guest.
we do have a guest on fire. We do have people to join us every once in a while, right?
Yes,
The one and only Lieutenant Anthony Buckner, who happens to be the Public Information Officer for the Shelby County Sheriff's Office here in Memphis and Shelby County, Tennessee. Welcome to Funky Politics, sir.
Hello. Thank you so much for the invite to sit amongst you guys. I'm so excited to be here.
You're welcome. You're fully decorated.
Well, I tell you, this brother right here.
Can you lock him up?
He already has before.
Oh, okay, well, good. Yeah, y'all leaving out together. All right.
Yeah, I'm riding in the backseat of the truck.
Warren's finally caught up with you.
We have we went through a historic election in 18. Historic election. And one of those elections that I think we've only seen it happen one time, and your boss
And
did
this
it.
is in Shelby County.
And this is in Shelby County, Tennessee.
Right.
We elected the first African American sheriff in Shelby County.
The first
history.
elected.
That's what I said. The first elected African American sheriff
Make sure you
in Shelby County,
There you
Tennessee.
go.
And he's now been in office. What I want to say, is it 200 days? Not probably a little bit over 200 days, I would guess, right now.
Somewhere in the range.
Somewhere around. Tell me how things going.
Busy.
And you're the information officer, so you know all of the information. You know everything about.
Are you the
what's going
first
on.
African American information officer?
I am not actually.
Okay.
Chip Washington.
Right.
Chip was.
Now, I don't know if he was the first, but I definitely know he was the last African American public information officer for the sheriff's office.
Okay.
But it's been super busy since Sheriff Buckner has taken office. I can honestly say that he has hit the ground just running. Right. And one thing that he has been committed to is keeping his campaign promise of being in the community. If you're watching your local news, you'll see him probably weekly somewhere in the community doing something great or participating in some kind of event. And when you don't see him on news, he's on our social media platforms, just really letting the community know, hey, I'm a sheriff that's going to be present, listening to the people of this great county.
Right. So what are you getting from the people? What's the main thing, the main message you're getting now that the sheriff has come out and you have their presence? I'm pretty sure people are coming and saying something of common accord in terms of what they want to see done in your office.
Yes, they're just simply appreciating him for just keeping that one promise of many that he made on the campaign trail. But they're just thanking him for listening. Oftentimes, my office sits right next to the sheriff's office. Yeah. So I'm seeing citizens walk in and out of his office all day long. You know, one of the things that he talked about on the campaign trail, hey, I want to hear from the citizens. I want to hear from each of you to know what your concerns are so I know how to best address them. And then I want to hear what recommendations or suggestions that you may have. Right. You know, hey, we'll put thought behind it. And if it's something that we can implement, we'll simply do that. So I'm seeing different people from the business community to citizens walk in and just share what their thoughts are with the sheriff. And I think that's excellent, not just from being an employee of the sheriff, but being a citizen and a voter as well.
Right.
Wow.
One of the things that had me excited about this sheriff is that, you know, he expressed lots of commitment to the community, but there was also a task force around ACEs and ACE awareness and childhood trauma and toxic stress and impact that has in communities. And he was actually one of those people who was trying to be involved in that long before it was a popular kind of thing to do. Right. How have you all kind of adjusted in the way business is done or the way of thinking based on some of the sheriff's perspective on how to do things differently based on what we know about trauma and the impact it has on communities?
Well, one thing I can say that the sheriff is really big on making sure that the people below him are fully aware and fully trained on these types of topics. So one thing I can definitely tell you is that he has sent a lot of his staff to various trainings to know how to identify and address those particular issues. He has assembled a team of employees to try to strategize to see if there's anything that we can do differently as a department as a whole to respond to trends that we're seeing.
Okay. Well, one thing I want to get in, while we're on that topic of juveniles, and I know that the sheriff supports this, it's the youth. What do we call it, Tosh? Because Tammy had a wonderful name. It used to be the Juvenile Justice, but it's a youth.
I believe it's a Youth Justice Center.
Youth Justice. I think that's the name they agreed to.
And education, Youth Justice and Education.
Exactly. And of course the mayor is wanting to build a new facility and take it out of or separate it from the court, which it should have been anyway.
He's in the county mayor too.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the Shelby County mayor. That's correct. And so the sheriff's on board with that. When you all came in, did you realize, and he was a chief deputy at the time, did you all realize the magnitude of the issues that our young people are facing just really waking up every day in the confines of juvenile court.
No, and I don't think you'll ever fully comprehend just the issues that come along with some of these youth detainees. I love one of the stories that the sheriff often tells, which is he walks through juvenile court pretty often. And one particular kid he came across, he said, "Hey, this is a good-looking kid. Any family would love to welcome him in." And he asked this kid, who was a fairly tall individual, how did he end up here? And he said, "Well, I grew up in a life where no one told me no. They thought that I was going to be an NBA player, and from teachers to mentors to parents, they all just gave him what he wanted because he was supposed to be the ticket out for the family." Wow. So the first time that he was actually said or told no was in our facility, So, so it's something just as simple as that. And of course, you have the gang nexus and the issues that are going on there, but there's just a huge array of issues that these youth are facing every day. The sheriff often says, "Hey, there are no bad kid or no kid born bad. They're just born into bad situations." Right. And we see that often with these children that's in our custody right now in juvenile court.
I like the way you say the term children, because that's what they are. You want to call them everything that you want to, but when you got a 12 or 13 or 14, that's a child. And you're hearing it first right here on Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network, but it's still a child, right? Tosha, and I know in this space that you work in the education space, and I've talked to plenty of people, the mind is still not developed, right? And so you've got children making old
really bad
adults,
decisions, just bad, stupid, silly kid decisions, right? Underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. That's what happens. It's impossible to anticipate the long-term consequences.
But your office is, juvenile justice reform is a popular phrase. That people have really nationally, and it's really ringing true in this local area now, on city and in county government. Mm-hmm. It's used a lot. We're in the campaign season. We're going to hear it a lot. But from a law enforcement perspective, when you hear the term juvenile justice reform, what does that mean from the law enforcement perspective?
So I can say from our component on the topic, it's just really trying to interrupt that school to pipeline.
School to prison. We understand what you mean.
Yeah. Ooh, man, my tongue getting tied on that one. But just trying to interrupt that. So I can remember being a young patrol officer when this concept just kind of got started. And basically the thought then was to, hey, let's see if there are some particular charges out there where we can issue a juvenile summons to some of these children, return them to their parents, and allow the court system to work out the best solution to this particular issue, and not just transport them to juvenile court. So that's something that's now a common practice for our officers and our deputies out there, which is, okay, let's look at the charge, right? Is this child a threat to society?
Yeah.
Do we really have to remove this child from society and bring them into custody? And if we think that they can remain with their parents, for example, curfew violation. Yeah. Okay, you stop a child that's out at 1 o'clock in the morning. Right. We don't need to take that child to juvenile court. Truancy. Okay, they didn't go to school. They're skipping school. We don't need to take that child to juvenile court. We can return them either to the school on truancy or to the parent. Right. So we're trying to interrupt that as much as possible because we don't want to condition these children to get used to sit in the back seat of their car. In fact, we really want them to experience sitting in the front seat of the car. But we don't want them to get used to sit in the back seat of their car or going inside our juvenile court facility with the doors closing behind them. We don't want that experience. Wow. If there's another way to do it, which is, hey, 2 weeks from now, 1 month from now, we're going to have someone from juvenile court contact you and figure out what can we do to hopefully encourage you to return to school or don't stay out late at night, then that's what we want to do. And I think that's the component of this issue that we can, hey, let's stop transporting so many of these children to juvenile court, which is something that we are actively doing now.
Wow. How are you all working with the Public Education Center to serve as sort of a liaison for that? Because, I understand you can't do anything when school is closed. It's summertime. And maybe there is something if people get a little bit more innovative. But if they're not interfacing with you from a law enforcement jail perspective, some institution should be partnering with when they're getting these alternative results for truancy and other things that are not serious offenses. So is there any communication between you all and the public school system? And maybe in private schools, but I'm saying public school because the county has taken over the public school system, funding it and everything else. Is there any interrelationship between you and the public school system with regard to how you administer your alternative results?
Yeah, so forgive me for not knowing the exact names of some of these.
Oh, don't worry about it. I don't know them either.
I'm a professional meet and goer, right?
There you go.
But I know that there are some talks about having like day centers,
right,
where we can take these children to, and they can, hopefully have some kind of intervention done at that stage. Again, not taking them to juvenile court, just trying to avoid that at all possible. So yes, there are some conversations, and there are some hopefully some decisions being made on those particular options. So yes, there are some that's happening hopefully soon.
Great.
One of the things that I'm also kind of curious to know, and you brought it up on when we're engaging with young people, what are we doing to make the work that you do, like, because county work and city work is really different. County law enforcement, city law enforcement is really different. What are you all doing to do a better job of being like the friendlier face? Because I feel like the sheriff's office, like, there's not as much like, oh, we hate the sheriff, as much as like, oh, we hate the police.
Yes, yes. Well, let me say it's a couple of things, and I could talk, all day on this topic here. But one of the things that I don't know how many of you guys know this, but we have deputies inside of 28 schools, spread throughout the county, and we really, really train heavily on them mentorships. Learn, not just being in the schools, patrolling for the bad guys, right? But how to take that young man or that young lady who's walking down the hallway and become mentors to them. So we put a lot of emphasis, a lot of money into training these officers to know how to do those kind of things. We also have an Explorer program where we bring our youth in. I want to say the age is under 21. We bring them in and we allow them to have just a front row seat at law enforcement. Where they can connect and sit alongside a deputy sheriff, whether it's in uniform patrol or detective division, and just learn the profession in itself. So that's one thing that we do. But then also sharing through our social media platforms the great things, and I do say great things, that we are doing in the community. For the last probably 3 to 4 years, we've really tried to invest a lot of time in that because, unfortunately, a lot of law enforcement social media platforms show, hey, we're looking for this person, we're looking for that person, or we arrested this person, and we arrested that person. But we're taking our social media platforms, we're showing some of that because that's needed. We need tips to come in. We need our viewers and followers to share information. But then also we want them to see that, hey, it's not just about arresting people, but it is about, hey, we're out delivering meals on wheels for MIFA, programs like that, and we're doing tons of those kind of things.
I want to talk about another relationship that I heard you all have, especially with a school or college or university that I'm connected with. That's Lane College. I think you all have had some recruiting efforts out there. And let me say this, and I want to be very frank about the history of the Sheriff's Department here in Shelby County. Typically, we have not seen a lot of deputies that look like the folk who are in the majority of Shelby County, right? Black folk. I won't call it what it is, but now I think there's a drive to make it as inclusive as possible, right? With the Sheriff's Department, and so you're going places that you've normally not gone before. You go to Lane College, you have not been there before. I've not heard y'all over at Lane College before, and I applaud that. Okay.
Yeah, so we actually have a team right now at Lane College. They've been there all day, getting our message out that we're looking for a few good men and women to join the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Wow. But yes, it is a push to diversify our department, and make it look as closely as we can to the community in which we serve. When I got hired and became a deputy in 2001, I can remember patrolling Southeast Shelby County, which is like the Hacks Cross and Shelby Drive area. Sure. Right. And I would stop at gas stations, and it was interesting to me. I would get stopped often, weekly, sometimes daily, by people saying, "I've never seen a black deputy sheriff." I'm like, what? What do you mean? Of course, I see, a lot of
people would stop
colleagues.
You. You're supposed to be stopping them.
Yeah, they would literally say
you're
that
unique to them, right?
But it was kind of heartbreaking again because to me, it really showed that we had a deficit when it came to representing the entire community. So I can truly say for at least the last 8 years, there's been a concerted effort to try to, diversify our department, which I think we're doing a pretty good job at that. Like you talked about just a moment ago, we're at Lane College today trying to recruit as much as we can from there. But shockingly, we have a difficult time recruiting female whites.
Female whites,
yeah,
really?
we for some reason we having a difficult time there. But
Is that based on just your officer? Is that something that's happening nationwide with law enforcement recruiting female white officers?
I can't speak to nationwide, but I can definitely say for us, we typically, if we do run a class, we may not have any, or we may just have one.
Right.
But again, our goal is to try to make our agency look like the community in which we serve.
Sure.
What about black females? I mean, are you all good with in terms of when it comes to recruiting? Are you getting the numbers that you're looking for in this community in terms of black females?
Yeah. So we don't see an issue right now with recruiting our African American females. Yeah. But let me pause right there because I want to just throw something out right there. Some great news. If you could see when I started talking about the sheriffs, I'll almost jump out this seat. But
you should. You're the PIO. You should be excited about the news coming out.
But since Sheriff Buckner has been elected to sheriff, he has actually promoted our first African American female chief in our agency.
Wow.
And I think that's
good stuff.
that's great stuff. Yes.
200 years?
It only took us 200 years.
Yes, the first African American female chief to be a part of our agency. So again, you can hear not just from recruiting from outside in, but even from the inside of our agency, just trying to promote and again allow our command staff to represent the community in which we serve.
Well, you know what, Lieutenant Buckner, let me tell you something. We appreciate you stopping by with us here on Funky Politics. Make sure you bring that young man who's actually the sheriff. Bring him by sometime. We'd like to talk to him.
Did you say young man?
Yeah. No. His hair's blacker than mine. Okay? I'm not going to talk about yours, but his hair's blacker than
Young man compared to DC.
Whatever. I'm not even worried. Hey, look, you've been listening to Funky Politics. We have the one and only PIO, the Public Information Officer, Lieutenant Anthony Buckner with the Shelby County Sheriff's Department on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Keeping it real, right, and funky.
I think one of the things that makes a difference is having an African American man who leads as the executive editor. I'm always about this girl power. One of the other things we've been talking about is youth and their interaction with the justice system.
Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
3.
Am I gonna sit there and argue with you over we had steak 2 days ago, I want chicken?
B.
I'm gonna be spicy all of the time. I don't care if I'm single or not.
C.
I think that the foundation is how you were brought up.
3 black chicks on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
Funky Politics.
Welcome back. Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. DC, High Energy, Doc Ward. High Energy, Tosha Downey. I just said, I like to mess with you, man. You know, I don't do anything else in my life. I'm going to take a shot at you every day.
Who are you talking to?
I don't know myself.
I figured that.
Because I have confirmed that I am low energy.
No, you high energy. You high.
We're trying to figure out who in the world you were talking to.
Whatever.
We some sedated lawyers over here.
We just sitting there just watching him go.
Well, I'm sorry.
We just watching him.
Like
That's the most
money.
enthusiastic you've been in forever, man.
And I hadn't even had coffee yet this evening.
That's right.
Coffee.
That'll probably slow you down.
Whatever.
But I tell you what, though.
Let's do it.
Love is funky.
Yeah.
Life is funky. Education is funky.
Ooh.
Politics is funky. This world is funky. But what I want to know right now,
What is that?
from each one of you,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna give you one topic. Well, just give me one topic right now. I'm gonna start ladies first.
Ladies first.
What right now is funky to you? What's funky to you? What this week? What this week or last week or any week? Because it's time for people to really understand just what we have to deal with every day.
Sir,
What's the funkiest thing that you could think of is going on in your mind right now?
the funkiest,
That's got you just like
stankiest, no good,
Putrid.
trashiest,
Well, hold on now. Quit talking about me like that. Hold on.
political-ist
there you go.
thing
Yeah,
is
Lord help.
Yeah.
somebody done spent $6.5 million to get they dumb as a box of rocks child in college.
Wait a minute. Time
How
out.
dare you
time
talk
out,
about my
time out,
parents?
No, time out. First of all, I know where you're going.
6
I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
A lot of money.
We are not going to talk about the kids.
Okay, we're
going to talk about the kids.
parents.
We can talk about. We can talk about.
Be quiet.
We can talk about the parents.
And we can talk about
We're
Yale.
not gonna do like Kellyanne Conway and talk about
We
the
can
kids.
talk about-
We're and Kellyanne Conway. We're gonna get to her in a minute, but we're gonna talk about the kids. So
All right.
So go ahead. You talk about the kids.
So
It is funky.
So I just spent this past Saturday hanging out literally with some of the hardest working young people in this city.
Okay.
Young brother Miles has a program called Youth Prep where he's just trying to make sure that his peers and other young people know about college opportunities, internship opportunities, all this,
Wow,
right?
great.
So these parents are like, hey, Miss Tosha, we trying to figure out how to get our kids in school. And the story I tell is that this is a real meritocracy, right? And that talented, young, hardworking folks are not going to be disadvantaged.
That's the story of America. It's not, not the story. I mean, yes, your story you tell,
right.
but it's not like you made it up.
I'm telling parents this story
right.
that your student who has worked really hard, some at the best schools in the city, and some at schools that don't have any AP classes, that don't have dual enrollment, don't have any of the fancy trappings, but are young people who work exceptionally hard and who have real plans and ambitions for themselves, and their families have those same ambitions for them. So I've spent my whole weekend doing that. They're sending me articles talking about thank you for telling us about all these colleges and what it takes to get in and all this stuff. Now, mind you, this is stuff that people pay college consultants $5,000 to $10,000
or more.
For.
Go ahead.
Right. But in real life, most people, like in September, they get their little contracts. It's a $5,000 retainer for a college consultant on the high end. Ooh. You know, if you got a kid who's going to make you work a little bit, that consultancy fee is about $10,000 for a retainer. So you understand that the families with the most resources have always accessed the system in a way that's not unusually inaccessible for low-income kids. Like most guidance counselors at most schools across the country, wealthy or poor, are on average about 650 students to one counselor.
Okay.
So what most counselors and communities are expecting, that the Memphis Challenges of the world, the Reach Memphises of the world, the Upward Bounds of the world, the private consultants of the world are doing the work to make these opportunities accessible, to demystify the college application process, to help young people realize that there's more than Harvard and there's more than the University of Memphis, right? Because those are the spectrum. Yeah. I know the colleges that's in my neighborhood, and I know the one big shiny school way out in Boston somewhere, right? And so it is difficult to help young people understand it. So when you get a chance to break down the families, hey, there's over 1,800 undergraduate institutions. There's another 3,800 two-year institutions. And if we add all the TCATs and Tennessee Career Academies and Career Academies in Chicago, like you get a whole universe of opportunities for young people. So everybody who doesn't get into Harvard has the opportunity to go somewhere that's a good fit for them. So now I just spent my whole weekend talking to them about this. And then we go watch Duke get stomped by Carolina.
Yes, Lord. Yes, won't he do it?
And then on Monday.
This time.
And then on Monday, after I done told all these parents all this good stuff, and they sending me articles about how excited they are, and their kids getting all these offers, and they thinking about her. And then I see that the rich people done bought all the spots that I just told these hardworking kids that they can get in.
They bought the spots.
And they done bought the spots.
And they bought the spots that their kids, for sports their kids have never played.
You ain't even cruised before.
Not that they're not good at the sport.
You not even.
They never even played the sport.
We done Photoshop your picture. We put your head on an elite cruise team.
I'm on the rowing team, but I never even owned an oar.
I wouldn't even know what to wear.
What?
Wow.
You've never been to regatta?
No, I've never been to regatta.
You've never been to regatta?
Sir.
You're not a bourgeois Negro.
Well, you would.
I've been called a whole lot of Negroes, but a bourgeois is not one of them ever before, right?
But seriously though,
does this happen?
So again, I have families. I'm working with families everywhere. Like I have a family in Atlanta. We're heading out to Colorado. We're going to try to check and see on some schools out there.
These are families that you are
that I work with,
helping to get their kids
to help them get into college.
Along the way and get to college.
Along the way. And they're always like, Miss Downey, we got to pay you something for this. We got to pay you for your services. You don't have to pay me for my services because my services are free. But it's because I understand what most young people are up against in trying to navigate the college application process. And what parents are up against in trying to finance quality education.
So let me short circuit it because you've got 50 people now that are under indictment.
50 is the
50
tip
right. I said right now.
You know the tip.
Right now.
So you know it's a whole
33 of the 50 are parents.
That's right.
Operation, what they call it, Varsity Blues.
Yes.
Parents across the nation are being indicted for paying other people who are also being indicted to get their students scholarships for things to which their children do not apply, cannot apply, will not apply, and will never be qualified to do, but they're in school representing or misrepresenting that they are qualified. And these are really quality schools, so to speak, the Georgetowns, Harvards, USCs, University of Southern California, and the like. I could go on. And among those, of course, we have the two actresses and their families that we know of, which are Lori Loughlin and Becky with the good hair, and Felicity Huffman, the desperate housewife, also with the good hair. So for you, and I think the rub that's come about with it is that when it first came about, a lot of people thought that this was some NCAA sports fixing things for folks to play sports. And then the first connotation, and I got when I started seeing the first blogs, were as if these were kids that were African American
and not qualified.
Then there was the radio silence across the morning, and we found out the truth that not only were these not African American kids, but these were the blue bloods, the elite non-African American Caucasian kids. And all of a sudden, the whole trajectory changed because we're no longer talking about kids that can't. These are kids that actually have the ability to get into school, or parents have the ability to get them into school, even if they're academically challenged. There are legal ways to make that happen. This was just done in a manner that not only cheats the system and brings a black eye to the integrity of the system, it also keeps opportunities away from those kids who would be deserving. Because now, when it comes to sports, with the NCAA, you've got college teams that may have to be on probation. So now their scholarships are reduced.
That's right.
So even there are other kids down the line that won't be able to go to those same schools because the scholarships for those kids won't be available.
Right.
The scholarships for the kids that were cheated out of are not available. And so the whole thing that you're pushing to those parents about the attainability, if there's such a word, for college for their kids, all of a sudden comes into question. And the whole integrity of our system comes into question once again. Is this a world or a nation where we only get by if we pay to play?
I got a question for you then. I got a question for you, Ty. Is this widespread that you think, and has it been happening since the dawn of time now?
So let me say this. So we're talking about 8 schools. So now remember, I just told you 8 schools are indicted in this process or implicated.
Sure.
There are 1,800 undergraduate degree granting institutions.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
And so when we talk about that total number of about 1,800, of that 1,800, there are about 500 that rank in the universe of highly selective and highly competitive.
So it's a little less than
That's the group of schools that are most susceptible to this type of an experience, right? Because a talented young person is likely to get in to any number of
But what about in Alabama, though? But no, think about it. Think about my kid can't
Alabama may be on the line, though. I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying. But what
the story's
some
not
of these
over.
larger institutions,
It's a high demand.
Flagship public schools automatically fall into that category.
The University of Texas was in this group.
Yes, also,
and UCLA was in this group. They're public schools.
Flagship public schools, meaning the hardest to get in state schools, or right, like it's the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Absolute has the potential to be, but the reason it is problematic, it is because it is the seats in the most coveted institutions. And what happens at those institutions, and this is what I communicate with families, it's not those parents were not paying for their kids to learn how to read and write at USC.
No, they're paying for them to get on YouTube.
Who they
and get but really think about it.
Be at the right parties.
They're on YouTube, and I've got 1.6 million followers today. I can monetize that. Because I'm at a good school like an SC. I'm in a big market like LA. I have the opportunity now to monetize that for life just from going to school, pretending like I'm on a routine, but I'm not.
Yeah, that also, but the unique space that elite schools occupy is multifaceted. What the data consistently shows is that most of us, college educated or not, do not traditionally move social strata.
Right.
What elite schools usually buy you is access to a different social strata.
That's right.
And a network.
It gives you the opportunity to build the social and the cultural capital that you would not otherwise get, right?
Absolutely.
Like most of the families at our local state university are working class families.
Right.
And the probability that my little working class self is going to meet the bank presidents, the JP Morgan Chases of the world, and
there may be one person in there. There
are one or two.
1%.
But at an elite institution, the vast majority of the population has that level of access.
I don't even want to drop names on this
privilege.
because I could think of a lot of names right now, especially one that's in our city right now who is leading a part of a corporation who went out to another school on the East Coast and acted a plum fool, and he had another one that went down to the lower East Coast and acted another plum fool, but I'm Southeast Coast, and I'm going to leave that alone. But I want to get to. Can I do me now? I mean, I know, and I want to talk a little bit about elitism. And
but
this part about elitism. I don't want to drop anybody's name, but this part of elitism has a lot to do with what occurred in the federal court this past week with Paul Manafort. And I understand that sentencing guidelines, and I know what sentencing guidelines are, and I know what a federal judge can deviate from. Right. But if that did not show, this to me was just a part and parcel of what's been going on in our country. And I think, Doc, you both are attorneys. I mean, I saw something that said, this has got to be, we've got to be one of the worst days in the history of law.
It's just a reminder,
of justice.
It's just a
you
reminder.
can take that position, but I'm going to take a much more optimistic position.
Okay,
because as
make this right for me and for other people.
As a former criminal defense attorney has represented people in federal court, I look at it as precedent. Federal court is a court that relies heavily on precedent, much more probably than any other court, because just what it is. Because what's done in federal court has to apply nationwide. So if I see Paul Manafort, someone with no criminal history, no at least documented criminal history, no arrest until now, and he's being indicted and got convicted for a money crime that's really low on the totem pole anyway, I know if I have the same kind of offense, I can use that as precedent. But what it does show you, though, is that the United States Sentencing Guidelines and Policy Statements, which is the book upon which sentences are determined.
Yes, sir.
Congress and the committees put that together. Yes, sir. But it goes to show you that when it comes to white-collar crime versus those things that we're more in our communities acquainted with.
That's right.
The value that those persons that are convicted of those crimes get less time than those of us who don't have opportunities and probably have done less to harm society.
Exactly.
There's a true need for sentencing reform.
Even when there's a true need. The criminal code between the crack and the cocaine.
Absolutely.
Back,
same thing.
30, 40 years? It's the same stuff.
But white-collar crime, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with narcotics.
Well, no, I just said the criminal code.
And people say that's not a big deal. But can you? But if you really look at what happened with Paul Manafort, through all this fraud that he was committing, it may not necessarily equate in this particular instance to collusion with Russia, but when you think about the ability and what he put himself in harm's way of being compromised, and Michael Flynn the same way, being compromised by a foreign government entity to affect our election process, which is one thing that one of the highest level, one of the most highest levels of integrity goes into our process. For that to be effective.
That's it.
And compromised to a point where people start to really genuinely lose faith in the system. Do you know the level of revolt that could generate if more such people were found guilty of the same thing? You live in a world right now, most people in America, you get up and you go to work, you go to the coffee machine, coffee's already there.
That's right.
And you never ask how it gets there. You never ask how it gets empty. And that's most folks. And I call that sort of society where you live under protections that are there for you. You take them for granted. Wow. But you find 10 or 12 people all of a sudden that really feel like this country's foundation, its elections processes, its transfer of power processes, legislative processes, judicial processes, no longer stand up and mean the things the Constitution says it means. You will have revolt uncontrolled in this country. And you never had anybody that would test the integrity of any of those systems the way we're seeing it right now.
Well, let me throw this out there. I want to throw this piece out there because I think that there is a prevailing thought that this president will in some kind of way pardon the offenses of Mr. Manafort. But I thought, which was interesting, Cyrus Vance of the state of New York,
right. State Attorney General.
I mean. Not minutes after,
we'll slap some state charges on you. We pardon you for that.
So, do you think that was? I don't want to use the term petty, but he did commit these crimes.
It was the assurance that there will be some.
Do you think that was
penalty.
a personal shot at the president?
No, I think what he was doing is exactly what I've heard people say. He was preventing a miscarriage of justice.
That's right.
Wow.
And although the president does have the authority, the unfettered authority to pardon for people that are convicted of federal crimes, for someone that has basically taken our systems for granted. Somebody has to be there showing that anyone that does something that, even
Egregious.
though the sentencing guidelines haven't caught up with it yet, someone who does something that is that big of a compromise to everything that our country is based on, there has to be a check and there has to be a balance. And I think what Cyrus Vance was showing you was that how the checks and balances work.
I think he showed how.
Ain't God good?
I think he showed. He showed how
Won't
the
he do
cow.
it?
He showed how the cow ate the
Yes,
cabbage,
she
right?
will.
Yeah.
Doc, you got anything? I mean, you got anything that's burning on your mind? I mean, you got a couple
I
minutes.
think metaphor was burning on it. You see them broke it down
hold on.
and went into constitutional law professor status. I thought
Manafort,
was
you know what?
over there.
You know
well,
what?
see, I'm sitting at this table with two black scholars.
But
Let me tell you why I said that.
I'm trying
You
not.
guys have been able to been afforded fantastic educations outside of Memphis, and mine was in Memphis in
But
Shelby
we
County.
scraped from South Memphis.
But you scraped from South Memphis. Other than Marcus, he's from the good part of South.
I'm from South Memphis.
He's from South City. I keep asking, where the hell is South City? But anyway,
Well,
I grew up in
before
South
South City,
Memphis.
hey,
Are you from
look.
South City or South Memphis? I grew up in South Memphis.
I'm from South Memphis.
But I guess my point is, and I knew that your
I'm from the
passion
Hay,
was there.
baby.
You're a
White-
Howard graduate in the course of North Carolina, and so you guys have
Clark made me.
Yes,
Carolina just get the credit later.
There
you
you
get the
go.
credit,
There you
but
go.
I know you've seen this stuff, and you walk these campuses. You know, the Becky with the good hair, or somebody else that said, "Well, how did you get there?"
I went to.
I got here on nothing
Yeah,
but sheer grit
for
and
me.
prayer.
For me, it's never a question.
A lot of it was prayer.
Like
I went,
nobody
look.
can ever. You know, I've never been in a place where people have the, I know some undergraduates.
unmitigated gall to say it to you in your
well,
face, yeah.
well, you got here because you black. No, I got here because I'm the bum.
Yeah,
Right, and because what we've
my
allowed,
girl Joyce said the
we've
bum diggity.
allowed meritocracy
Right,
to be
yeah.
hijacked. So the fact that your rich parents could give you every opportunity, you should be sitting in that seat. You should have had the best classes. You should have had the best instruction. Well, sir and ma'am, I went to the poorest schools in this city. I lived in the poorest zip code, and we still ended up here at the same place. Now you tell me who is more deserving of the seat.
Wow.
Well, I
don't
went
know
to
any way around
I
that.
went to two HBCUs. We didn't have a Becky with the good hair.
Well, you went to what we consider one of the most elite HBCUs.
There still was
Howard
no Becky
University.
with good
though.
hair.
I mean, well, I know, but
I mean, Becky with
you're in
the-
a city with Becky with the good
But
hair.
at Texas
Anyway.
Southern, Becky and all
Becky
the people with the
doesn't
good
have
hair
good hair.
wanted to try to get in there and say
Yeah,
and took the Texas
but there was no
Texas to the courts
that there's no Becky.
Whatever,
with
yeah.
good
to
hair.
Hey,
get
look.
themselves in there and said it was separate.
But I will tell you, I got one thing. I mean, I don't really have anything
You
to
got
talk
one
about
thing we're gonna
because
get out of
I'm still just stuck on R. Kelly ranting and raving
Lord
week
have
before
mercy.
last.
We still talking about R. Kelly.
Whatever that was.
As my grandma said, we still R. Kelly.
Like, I shall not be moved.
Yosemite Kelly.
R. Kelly.
He was just shooting off, man.
You
I mean,
ain't seen nothing so cold as a woman unmoved by such
but
foolishness.
if there's any, and everybody, I don't excoriate me, y'all. I think I said this before. If there's any credit, I guess, for lack of a better word, I can give to him.
Can you do that?
At least he acted like somebody that was wrongfully accused.
like a Supreme Court judge.
At least he acted like.
And on that note, you've been listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
I gave y'all 30 years of my life.
We got the funk. Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
Riffin' on jazz.
I'm Howard Robertson, one of your hosts for Riffin' on Jazz. Riffin' is your weekly visit with friends where we dive all in to that classic African-American art form called jazz every week on your favorite broadcast and podcast platforms.
Riffin' on jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
Funky Politics. 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 Politics.
Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network, news you can use, giving you knowledge when you don't even have to go to college. Just listen to us, and you will get all the degrees, not just one. 360 degrees of funk, and 360 degrees is hot. We'll give you some hot funk. Always.
It's hot up in here.
It's hot up in here. I'm
I know,
sweating
let
like
me-
I sweated like a Baptist minister spring revival right now, y'all.
Lord,
We turned
that's
it
a
up.
Baptist minister right there, Jesus.
We turned it up.
Under the tent with a box fan.
Under the anointing of the Holy Spirit.
But through all this pain and heat and everything else, you know what? God is still on the throne.
Yes.
And for those of us who believe, and I'm not going to get too religious at this point because that's
don't
not.
get
Don't
funky.
bring it.
I do
preaching.
believe, but I do believe, but I've not been ordained as a minister.
Praise
But I will say this: that it is good to know that in the midst of all that we deal with every day, that we can always turn to a higher power, and that higher power and the goodness of that higher power will give us the strength that we need to make it from each day to day. So if you're listening on the show and you ever get to a point of despair, just remember that you're not out there alone. You just have to have the faith to know where the source of your strength comes from and run to that strength so that it can carry you to your next destination and to your next good fortune.
You know something, you said carry you to your next destination.
Yes.
And I think, on today's show, Anthony came in and talked, Lieutenant Anthony Buckner came in and talked to us about some of the great work that they're trying to do with the Sheriff's Department. Because in past years, it's just not been there, right?
Right.
And so now you've got a sheriff who looks like us. He's talking to young people and young kids and parents that look like us. And he's trying to say, look, I'm going to cut off, if nothing else I do in this office, I'm going to cut off that school to prison pipeline the best way I can, the best way I know how, with the resources I got, Tosha,
Absolutely.
right? And so I'm glad he came by and he shared that with us because, you know what? I'm just looking forward to a better day in our county, in our city, right?
Faith is renewed. Faith is renewed to a big degree.
And the brother looks just like, me, except for the afro. I'm sorry, he didn't have any hair.
Except for the, narrow waistline.
Yeah. Well, he's just basically telling you that
voice.
the sheriff's office for kids wants to be the wind beneath their wings and not the shackles on their feet.
Whoa.
And speaking of shackles on their feet, it's time for us to get on up and get out on the street. And while all politics are local, faith is universal, and we're always real, right, and funky. So on behalf of Tosha and DC,
yes, sir,
and myself, we always command that you keep it real,
you keep it right,
and you keep it funky.
And we'll see you next time right here on Funky Politics.
Funky Politics, hosted by Daryl D.C. Catron, Tosha Downey, and Marcus M.D. Ward. Recorded at KUDZUKIAN Studios. Directed, produced, and distributed by KUDZUKIAN.